They knew him as Jim Carrey, and by the middle of that December his lawn had burned to a dull amber brittle. And at night, after the sprinkler's 10 minutes of city-rationed watering, the grass blades floated in pooled water, limp and wasted like his mother's hair in the final morphine sweats. The city of Los Angeles had been moving hellward since April, with bone-dry reservoirs and strings of scorching days, the forecasts reading like a sadist charm bracelet: 97, 98, 105, 103. Last week an F-16 had flashed like a switchblade through the ash-filled sky just as one of the gardeners on the Hummingbird Road estate collapsed of sunstroke and fell into seizures. The man fought as they carried him to the house, saying the Virgin Mary had promised him a slow dance for $3 in the cool shade of the ravine. At night came the Santa Anas, those devil winds that sapped the soul, that set police sirens wailing as the sunsets burned through napalm oranges into sooty mauves. Then each morning a smoggy breath would draw across the canyons and into the great house, passing through air filters recently equipped with sensors to detect assassination by nerve gas. He was bearded and bleary-eyed after months of breakdown and catastrophe. He lay naked in his bed, so far from peak form that if you watched through a hacked security camera at this moment, you might barely recognize him, might at first confuse him with a Lebanese hostage. Then, in a swell of facial recognition, you'd realize this is no ordinary shut-in watching television alone on a gigantic bed. And as the blood-red Netflix logo glared from an unseen TV, you'd say, I know this man. I've seen him on everything from billboards to breakfast cereals. He's the movie star, Jim Carrey. Just weeks ago, 30 seconds of home security footage was leaked to The Hollywood Reporter by some trader in his extended personal protection apparatus. In it, Carrey bobbed face down and fetal in his pool, wailing underwater like a captive orca. His publicist, Sissy Bosch, told Variety that he was preparing to play John the Baptist for Terrence Malick, who conveniently declined comment. The video sold for $50,000, a sum just large enough to inspire that most sacred of animal behaviors, a spontaneous market response. After the fifth paparazzo scaled his backyard fence, his security team had it raised to 15 feet, electrified, and fringed with razor wire, an $85,000 job including the city council bribe. Jim had since begun to hear the sizzles and squeaks of electrocuted wildlife as a sorrowful necessity, animal sacrifice to his godhead. And while some believed Sissy Bosch's John the Baptist story, most noted that it didn't explain Carrey's weight gain, or why some heard a distinctly Chinese accent in his moanings. It was now 2:58 in the morning. He'd been watching television for 7 hours. The binge had started with an episode of Ancient Predators featuring Megalodon, the super shark terror of the ancient seas. Then came Cro-Magnon versus Neanderthal, the story of how these early humans parted as cousins on the African plains, then re-met as strangers in Europe, only to begin a contest of genocide. Cro-Magnon had slaughtered without mercy, leaving famished Neanderthal orphans staring out from French caves into a blizzard, whose screaming whiteness, Jim knew, was that of total erasure. He was half French-Canadian and learned from the narrator that he carried Neanderthal DNA within him. He was descended from these orphans. Feeling their doom as his own, he'd begun crying tears of desolation, and then, unable to bear these, he'd hit pause with his grease-slicked thumb, freezing the screen on the tiny Neanderthal faces. For 10 minutes he lay trembling, muttering, "Oh, God," over and over, until Netflix, greedy for its own bandwidth, reset to the main menu, casting its red glow over him and his guard dogs, identical twin, steel-toothed Rottweilers who both answered to Jophiel. Their name was shared for the sake of efficiency and emergency, so that if one of Jim Carrey's many enemies broke into the house and he had only seconds to act, he could summon both with a breath.